parts of the brain that we teach in Focus Kids and really relates to this idea of self-regulation and co-regulation are our prefrontal cortex, which in Focus Kids, we teach the kids is the wise owl of your brain. That's kind of, I think of it as like the control center of your brain, all sorts of like thinking and planning happening there. And I will talk more about this in the next couple of slides. The amygdala, which is your guard dog, and that's basically the stress center of your brain that's reacting to threat, fight, flight, and freeze. And your hippocampus, which is the memory center of your brain. So this is so fun, and I'll bring out my actual puppet, but kids that are at Blue Lake or other schools that have used Focus Kids, they see this little guard dog, and so cute. They love to kind of touch him and pet him. And basically we use this, like your guard dog kind of barks at like threat and danger and looks out for things that are wrong. But your guard dog also overreacts to things. And sometimes, like maybe imagine there's a big problem, like there's a bear in the backyard. Or sometimes guard dog can react to a little problem, like I don't know, I can't find my shoes, or my tower fell, or whatever it is, depending on developmentally on the age of your kid. But this guard dog is, the brain name is called the amygdala. There's actually two of them, amygdalae, that are almond-shaped parts of the brain back by the brainstem. We all have them. Interesting part is that your amygdala are fully developed at birth. So, and this is kind of what keeps you alive, right? It's like your survival mechanism that causes you to fight, we either, physically, but also causes us to fight with our words. Kids do that all of the time, right? Even if it's just like, that's mine. That's kind of a territorial amygdala thing. So let's see, fight, flight, which would be run away, like feeling super scared that your kid runs away or you run away, or embarrassed. Sometimes a feeling of embarrassment can cause that as well. And then freeze, just like basically feeling paralyzed, like you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you just kind of shut down basically. And like babies have this fully when they're born. So not the rest of parts of our brain are not fully developed at birth, but this one is. So I even just think about, kids, babies being born and kids crying at the top of their lungs. Like this part of the brain works. But then the more kind of sophisticated parts of the brain take a longer time to work. And guard dog is so cute in this picture, but sometimes your amygdala gets a bad rap. Like it's always, looking out for threat and overreacting and things like that. It's like the seat of big emotions as well. But the function of this is that it's like made to protect us. It's made to keep us safe. It's kind of, I don't know the exact connection, but it's kind of like a connection really with that negativity bias, right? That like keeps us alive, keeps us safe, keeps us protected, those kinds of things. So that's part one. Actually, this is a good time to like comment about that, or anyone want to share something about, I don't know, could be your kid's guard dog going off recently or something like that, or a connection. Sometimes kids also, if they've gotten this in school, they really want to come home and then they want to talk about their guard dog. So, all right, I'm going to move on to the next, and then I'll pause in between. If anything comes up, just let me know. All right, so next is our prefrontal cortex, our wise owl, and this is what the one that I have looks like, and she kind of turns her head around. So this is what I was saying is like the control center part of your brain. This is where all thinking, learning, like any sort of executive function, like planning, prioritizing, anyone who does meal planning, which I don't, but if some of you are better at that than I am, like that's an executive function thing. Scheduling is executive function. This is all your prefrontal cortex. Also, problem solving. And I talk to kids about this too. Like this could be like, solving a problem like when they get a little older, like 2 + 2, or solving a problem like on the playground where somebody's on the tire swing for too long, and how do you work that out with a kid? Also, you probably heard this before, our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed till like, now they're saying like 25 or 26 years old. So of course we can all drive and vote and drink and do lots of stuff before our prefrontal cortex is fully developed, which I think is interesting. But sometimes we really have to work to like get our prefrontal cortex online. And then I'm going to ask you all just to do this with me for a second. We'll take a breath and just put your hand on your forehead right here like this. And just apply some gentle pressure. Take a deep breath. So this, your prefrontal cortex, and it kind of feels, it's a very grounding thing to put your hand there, but your prefrontal cortex is basically behind your forehead in your brain, behind that part of your skull. And I think it's really interesting because often like when we can't remember something or we're trying to think of something, right? Like how many times have you gone like this? And you're like, oh, what is that? Or what's that person's name? And I don't know, I think that's an interesting, like intuitive thing that we do that's like, oh, but this is also accessing this higher order thinking part of our brain. So I'm going to give us a second here. Does anyone want to chime in or comment about that part? All right, we'll have a chance to like give some examples after I introduce our last brain puppet, which is hippocampus. I introduced her today I was at Ross Montessori earlier today. So here's Miss Elephante. If your kid is in Little Blue or something like that, they'll be getting this. I don't know if our preschool teacher has been there yet, but just think elephants have great memory. Well, the hippocampus is basically the memory center of our brain. So it holds everything from like memories of like children can, that memory, it's not a like conscious memory, but like they intuitively remember the sound of your voice, like in utero, that's there. As they get a little older, it's like, oh, they have memory of like their, Christmas when they were 5 years old or something like that. And some kids do and some kids don't, but whatever memory it is, or being on the playground, but also memory that they hold in terms of learning and things like that. So the prefrontal cortex works together with the hippocampus. Things need to be processed through the prefrontal cortex before they go to that memory center of our brain. But when our good friend, I'll just scroll back a little bit here. When our good friend guard dog is all acting up about something, right? Our prefrontal, they don't work at the same time. So the wise owl and the guard dog can't work simultaneously. So I even think about like, oh, I don't know, I'm having to take a test or something like that. And if I'm so worried about it, that part of me is taking over, that fight, flight, and freeze part of me, I'm not really able to fully access my prefrontal cortex, which is thinking and figuring things out, or in turn, then access my hippocampus, which has holds all those memories and whatnot. So I feel like that's like a really short